Under a hill in northern China, there is a room. We know roughly where it is. We know roughly how deep. No one alive has seen inside it. In the last decade, machines were pointed at that hill. Radar, lasers, drones. The data came back full of shapes. Buried walls, vertical shafts, empty spaces, thousands of small objects nobody could name. From those shapes grew a story. An executed prince, mass graves, scrolls listing the crimes of an emperor. This film asks a narrower question. Not what lies under the hill, but what a machine on the surface can actually know. The answer arrives at the end. It is stranger than the ghost stories. Begin with the certain part. In 1974, farmers uncovered figures of fired clay. About 8,000 of them, standing in rows. Each face different. Not one mold repeated 8,000 times. Visitors see the pits. The pits are the small part. The complex around them covers thousands of acres. One account gives measurements. An inner wall circuit of 2.5 kilometers, an outer of 6.3. Inside those walls, the layout repeats the imperial capital, Xianying, an inner city and an outer city. So this is not a tomb with soldiers at the door. It is a copy of a country. There are clay stables, animals, birds, household equipment, bronze tools that still function after 2,000 years. Everything a state needs to keep operating, if the state were expected to continue underground. The soldiers face east, toward the kingdoms the emperor conquered. The usual reading is military, a screen of guards. Two accounts add a layer. East is sunrise. Sunrise means return. In that reading, the army is part of a mechanism. There is a hypothesis that the tomb was designed as a device for the soul's return. Figures aligned, mercury channels, a star map on the chamber ceiling. The man it was built for spent decades searching for a way not to die. He took preparations promised to extend his life. One account names an alchemist, Su Fu, and 2 documented sea expeditions. The same account says he consumed compounds containing mercury. Whether that is what killed him, none of these accounts establish. Remember the mercury. It returns later, and it is the one thing in this story that can be measured. Construction ran for decades. Historical figures put around 700,000 people on the site. One account dates the work from 246 to 208 BC, 38 years. Another calls the labor figure disputed. A single account gives dimensions. A mound 76 meters high, an underground palace roughly 140 by 110, the central chamber 30 meters down. Into this comes Albert Lin, who works without digging. Ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR, photogrammetry, drones. 3 accounts note where the technology came from, finding munitions and hidden structures in conflict zones. Equipment designed to locate what someone buried on purpose. Access to the closed zones has been controlled by the state for decades. Drone flights were prohibited. Every scan needed approval from above. Lin received access no foreign researcher had held. How? Not one account explains. The conditions are described consistently. Every instrument inspected before use. A separate application for each flight. An officer standing beside the operator while data was recorded. Nothing could be carried out or reinterpreted on site without supervision. 3 accounts call him the first to fly scanning gear over the burial mound. A 4th describes routine permits and claims no first. Before the findings, it helps to know what these machines actually do. Radar sends a pulse into the ground. Where the material changes, part of that pulse comes back. You record when each echo arrives and how strong it is. Timing converts to depth. What you get is a map of contrasts. Here, the ground stops being ordinary ground. It does not tell you what the thing is. A void reads as a void. Chamber, collapsed tunnel, pocket of air, the same signature. Metal reads as metal. A bucket and a mechanism look alike. LiDAR is different. It fires laser pulses and measures the surfaces they strike, mapping terrain under vegetation to the centimeter. It does not see through soil. Many retellings say the laser looked underground. It cannot. Photogrammetry builds three-dimensional models from photographs. Surfaces again. So the toolkit is excellent at geometry and silent about identity. That gap is where two versions of this story separate. The radar results are the solid part. Walls that appear on no existing plan. Vertical shafts more than 30 meters deep. And clusters of thousands of small objects nobody can name from the data. Two readings are offered. Personal possessions and materials that do not decay, or the remains of a real retinue. One author marks both as speculation. His reason is simple. The central chamber has never been opened. Surface mapping added more. Buried walls beyond the known boundaries and collapsed chambers. Areas consistent with many people buried at one time. Thermal signatures read as ancient hearths of intense heat. Beneath the warrior pits, zones of disturbed soil, not shaped like architecture, not behaving like natural geology. Four accounts call them mass graves. A fifth says only anomalies requiring study. The same data, two vocabularies. Deeper again, air-filled tunnels below every known chamber, described in no source, either collapsed or never finished. And under the main mound, a pyramid of hard-packed earth, invisible from the surface, a structure wrapped around whatever was worth protecting most. At the lower levels, the radar returned metal signatures. Ancient descriptions mention mechanical crossbows set as traps. Wooden triggers would have rotted. Bronze could survive. One author says the traps can still fire. The others claim only signatures. Now the story changes gear, and shapes acquire biographies. There are layers described as struggle, churned soil, tunnels filled while people were still inside. The conclusion drawn is that this complex may stand over one of the largest mass graves in history. A text supports it. Sima Qian wrote that after the burial the inner passages were closed and the outer gates lowered. The workers and courtiers who knew the secret were not let out. Two accounts carry that passage. The Shurji was compiled roughly a century after the sealing. So text and anomaly agree. That is convergence, not proof. Two accounts go further. Iron collars on some remains, meaning prisoners rather than paid craftsmen. Skulls with impact injuries. Ceilings brought down deliberately. Tools left lying beside the bodies. One account describes imaging that captured traces of people running, falling, and being dragged along a corridor. The corridor leads toward the main tomb, fleeing the mercury, or fleeing whoever was closing the door. One account cites a named team, researchers from Northwestern, 3D scanning peripheral burial pits. Bodies laid facing sealed walls, without the goods that ritual required. That is the only named study in the entire set. Then the deepest claim, a separate void, older and lower, holding a single carefully laid skeleton. A young man, around 20, with expensive high-status objects beside him and a bronze arrowhead in the skull. Not an accident, an execution, and the chamber is proportioned like a cell rather than a tomb. The bones show prolonged stress. The reading offered, he was kept alive down there for weeks, perhaps months. Around the main mound, more voids of the same shape and the same depth, which turns one death into a purge. The suspect is the second son and successor, clearing his rivals. Two accounts offer instead a ritual killing ordered by the emperor himself. And then the scrolls, bamboo, from sealed rooms near the main burial, opened over weeks in a climate-controlled chamber. What they contain is described as a register of crimes rather than a list of achievements. In order to bury 460 scholars alive, systematic burning of books, history, philosophy, science, medicine. The stated motive, destroy any framework in which the emperor's authority was not absolute. There are also confessions, engineers and builders admitting critical thoughts, slow work, contact with the already accused. One author adds the obvious. There is no way now to test whether a single accusation was just. Some passages translate badly. They appear to describe animating the clay army with breath, literal instruction, or ritual symbolism, unresolved. The scrolls mention a treasury never collected. Scans showed a void 3 stories tall beneath the central palace floor. The text carries a warning. The treasure is washed in star poison. Stop there and go back to the machines. Radar cannot read an arrowhead inside a skull. It cannot recognize an iron collar or a footprint in dust. To know that a young man was executed, someone must dig, lift the bones, and examine them. To read bamboo, someone must hold it. That is excavation, not remote sensing. None of these accounts names who excavated, when, or under whose permission, nor the film, the episode, or any published report. And the account with the most checkable numbers does not mention the scrolls at all. Absence is information too. Which brings us back to mercury, and to the one measurement here that does not depend on interpretation. Soil sampled near the central mound shows an anomalous concentration of mercury. For accounts say hundreds of times above the natural background level. One is specific, a 280-fold excess, from a survey by the Institute of Archaeology at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences in the 1980s. That is not an echo waiting for a name. That is earth in a container, measured. Ancient texts describe rivers of mercury inside the chamber, circulating around a model of the empire. One account specifies the channels followed the courses of the Yellow River and the Yangtze, and were kept in motion. A text written a century later describes mercury. The soil above the tomb is saturated with it. That is the strongest link in the whole story. Not proof of rivers, but something down there is real. The main chamber has never been opened, and the decision to leave it closed appears deliberate. Mercury vapor, a possible release of the atmosphere accumulated inside. No conservation technology equal to the contents. One account adds an official moratorium. Who makes that decision is never identified in any of these tellings. The cost of opening is not hypothetical. When a pit was breached, surviving paint vanished within minutes. For accounts placed that in the 1980s, in a smaller auxiliary pit, a fifth places it in 1974. Either way, color that had lasted 2,000 years failed on contact with air. The gray soldiers in every photograph are not what was buried. They are the bleached remainder. Local legends of a curse predate the 1974 discovery. The farmers who found the first pit lost their land and their health. Lin had to set that aside. Instruments do not measure curses. They measure contrast. One account reports that China's space agency has considered deep imaging capable of answering what fills the 30-meter chamber. The obstacles given are funding and political will. No date is attached, so treat it as an intention. So what did the scans actually show? Geometry. Walls, shafts, voids, an earthen pyramid, ground disturbed in ways soil does not disturb by itself. And one number, mercury, far above background, exactly where a 2,000-year-old text said it would be. Everything else, the prints, the collars, the scrolls, the loaded crossbows, is a name placed on top of a shape. The emperor duplicated his world underground and pointed his army at the sunrise, hoping to defeat forgetting. What he actually built is the one place where our best instruments stop at the door. The tomb is sealed twice, once with earth, and once by the limits of looking without touching. We know exactly where the answer is. So far, we have chosen not to reach for it.